Hiro is a world-class slacker who wastes away playing video games all day. However, everything changes when he accidentally gets trapped in a super realistic game and now has to get stronger to survive. It all begins on a certain afternoon when Hiro runs faster than Usain Bolt at a freshman racing event, but still ends up losing. The pain of losing weighs so deeply on him that he quit running for good and starts playing Sword Art Online rip-off games to make himself happy again. 2 years later, he's still traumatized by his embarrassing loss at the racetrack. So when the teacher asks about his post-graduation plans, he says he hasn't decided yet, and the old goofball starts quoting Andrew Tate's speeches to motivate him. Soon after, he walks to the hallway, where he sees his friend running in the tracks and starts to feel sad because he misses the good old days. When he tells his friend about his plans to play video games later, the dude advises him to join him at the gym instead, but Hiro refuses, claiming that it no longer matters if he trains his body. While walking home, Hiro concludes that the world is a horrible place, and he's proven right almost immediately, as two bullies show up and force him to give them some money. After a hard day, Hiro just wants to buy the new edition of his favorite video game and play his heart out, but when he arrives at the store, he realizes that he's short of cash because he accidentally gave the thugs a lot more than they asked. As Hiro does his walk of shame through the streets, he runs into a scrappy-looking game store he's never seen before. When he enters, he's instantly disappointed because all the games around are outdated. But then he notices the hot receptionist with gigantic melons, Riona, hammering away on her keyboard. He asks her if she has the latest edition of the video game, but she suddenly starts laughing and ranting about how the game's new editions are more fraudulent than the latest iPhones. Her silliness irritates him so much that he tries to leave, but she uses her glorious plots to charm him into buying the game from her. However, he realizes that it's an entirely different game than what he ordered, but when he asks for a refund, Riona refuses and claims that it's much better than the one he wants. Hiro tries to argue, but she informs him that the game she gave him is a super realistic game meant for adults and holds his hand while promising to do Netflix and chill with him inside the video game. Bro immediately folds, but on his way home, he realizes that he's been ripped off because the game is from 10 years ago. When he tries to call Riona, she doesn't answer, so he attempts to smash the video game out of anger, but calms down when he remembers that it's just as expensive as a Tesla Cybertruck. Afterwards, he returns to his bat cave, where he finally logs into the new video game and sees a goddess instructing him to go to Flora Castle. When he wakes up in the game world, he's impressed by how realistic everything feels, but when he stubs his toe, he feels pain in a video game for the first time, which shocks him. Just then, a blonde baddie named Alicia arrives along with her brother Martin, and they introduce themselves as his best friends in the game world. When he asks them for directions to Flora Castle, they start freaking out like he's just committed one of the crimes on the Epstein files, but he still tries to leave anyway. However, Martin suddenly tackles him to the wall and informs him that everyone is prohibited from leaving the town, but when Hiro insists on going, Martin challenges him to a duel to knock him back to his senses. Hiro smiles because he thinks it's a tutorial event that he can easily breeze through. However, his aura points drop to negative when Martin instantly nails his face with a punch, causing him to scream in pain as blood spills from his nose. Hiro starts crashing out, claiming his friendship with Martin is a load of nonsense, so Martin sends him flying once again. While nonchalantly peeling an apple with his knife, Martin starts teasing him for being weak. This triggers Hiro so much that he tackles Martin, but Martin suddenly drops dead, and he sees that Martin's knife has pierced his throat, which stuns him completely. As Alice crashes out, Hiro tries to explain that it was an accident, but she suddenly starts acting like a horror movie psychopath, which makes him run away. However, Alice chases after him desperately to avenge her brother, until he manages to find an alley to hide in. There, he starts plotting to escape the game, but Riona suddenly arrives in a fairy form and tells him that she can't be seen by the video game characters since she's there to support him. When Hiro tells her that he's slayed his best friend, she screams in shock and concludes that the game is already over for him. This news shocks Hiro as well, but Riona starts calling him a wannabe Jack the Ripper, so he explains that Martin's death was accidental and caused by a light push. When he asks her how to reset the game, she drops a bombshell, informing him that the game can't be reset as it mirrors the finality of real-world events. She then informs him that the game, Kiwame Quest, has an autosave, so even if he quits, he'd continue from after he unalived his best friend. This means he's stuck with that devious best friend slayer title forever, because even if he buys another copy of the game from the store, his play history is retained in his hard drive, and the only way he can really start over is by purchasing a new console. Bro's confidence immediately shatters as he remembers that video game consoles cost about 90,000 yen, But Riona adds to his torment by informing him that she sells them for 120,000 yen. This triggers him so much that he starts asking for his money back, and that's when she informs him that her store has an absolute no-return policy. When he threatens to report her to a customer agency, she tells him it'll only cost him since she has Saul Goodman as her lawyer, ready to defend her fraudulent deeds. She then informs him that Kiwami Quest is a full-dive role-player game sold 10 years ago only in Japan, and the player base kept shrinking until the game died, causing the company to shut down. When she tells him that there are still some players left, Hiro is shocked, but she tells him that it's no surprise since Japan is filled with degenerate nerds like you all, and reveals that one of the remaining players is named Jinji. Since Jinji was believed to have unalived his best friend in the game several years ago, Riona suggests asking him for tips, and Hiro agrees. She then tells him to check his right pocket, and when he does, he finds some coins in it, which she tells him to use to buy some cheap clothes for himself. Somewhere in town, some background characters are expressing how shocked they are that a nice guy like Martin was slain by his best friend, and one of them pulls out a One Piece style wanted poster of Hiro. Hiro can't believe that he already has a reputation worse than Diddy's in this new game. And Riona jokingly tells him to do plastic surgery like Bruce Jenner to disguise himself. She then goes into a more serious tone while advising him to keep his head down while walking to the clothes store close to them, but at this point, Hiro already wants to get out of the game. When they arrive at the clothes store, Hiro starts worrying that the store owner will report him, but Riona says it'll be alright because the stores in this video game are structured like real ones in the sense that they treat customers like royalty, no matter how suspicious they look. Inside the store, Riona recommends a worn-out cloak for Hiro, and he presents it to the merchant to make that purchase. But the merchant suddenly brings up how he's the talk of the town, which shocks him. As he freaks out, the merchant assures him that he won't report him. And just when Hiro starts to feel safe, he bumps the price to twice its original price. Soon after, he asks where they can find Genji, and Riona reveals that he's been frequent at the casino for the past 10 years, which shocks Hiro. However, when he asks if Genji has a gambling addiction, Riona says she has no clue and presumes that he's just human garbage. As they walk through town, Hiro is shocked by how large the city is, so Riona informs him that the city of Ted is a massive, self-sufficient city, nicknamed the Closed City, as it's closed off from the rest of the world. As they walk through a dark alley, she tells him that they're clear of the crowd in the city, and he feels relieved until he hears a terrifying voice calling his name. When he turns, he sees Alicia in full psycho mode, claiming that she's been looking for him, and when he asks how she was able to see him through his hood disguise, she says it's because she's known him for a very long time. Riona starts glazing the video game again, causing Hiro to yell at her, and since Alicia can't see Riona, she asks if he's talking to his JoJo stand. When Hiro explains that Martin's death was an accident, Alicia says she already knows and starts yapping about how much she loves Hiro. Just when he starts feeling safe, she goes back into freak mode and declares that she'll give him a pleasing death and end herself right afterwards, so that all three of them can be together again in the afterlife. She then pulls out the same knife that ended Martin and starts doing parlor tricks with it while explaining to him that she's a powerful knife wielder known as Hell's Fruit Slicer. When she charges in for the attack, Hiro barely manages to dodge, and Riona informs him that she was originally meant to join his party due to her crazy speed and skills. She then tries to cleave his head off, but Bro dodges and starts running fast to escape her while Riona steers him like a donkey. Eventually, they find a hiding spot, and Riona praises Hiro for his speed, but he asks why he's feeling extremely tired in a video game. This makes her explain that Kiwami Quest reproduces fatigue the same way it does the five senses. Suddenly, his necklace starts glowing, and Hiro thinks he's about to level up, but it only upgrades his title to Running Best Friend Slayer. Riona starts celebrating, but he says he needs to log out because he has school the next day, and she tells him to save before doing so. However, his save screen refuses to pop up, and Riona reveals that the game doesn't allow players to log out during combat. Just then, Alicia jumps out of the forest and stabs his hand, causing him to scream in pain. However, Riona distracts Alicia by punching her in the eyes, and this allows him to run away and log out. The next day, he tells his friend, Takafumi, about the game, and Takafumi advises him to stand up to the bullies. When he returns home, his sister, Kaide, scolds him because of the noise he made while playing the game the previous night. After she leaves, he heads back into the game and runs into Jinji, who has the body shape of Peter Griffin, and Jinji helps him treat his injured hand. Soon after, they head to a casino, where Jinji narrates how he strangled his best friend before informing him that the game reflects their real-life physical ability, which shocks him. Hearing this, Hiro claims that it's impossible to clear the game, but Jinji says someone named Kamui succeeded in doing that. Suddenly, Jinji betrays Hiro by taking off his disguise and loudly telling everyone at the bar to call the city guard since he's found the murderer. As Hiro stares in shock, the oversized scumbag tells him that he could get cleared and released if he does well during interrogation. Just then, the guards arrive at the scene, and their leader tells Hiro that he is under arrest. Hiro can't believe how fast the guards showed up because it doesn't seem realistic at all, unlike everything else in the game, but the guard leader shows him that he has a warrant for his arrest. However, Hiro tries to run away, but Jinji slams him to the ground and puts him in a sleeper hold. While struggling to catch his breath, Hiro realizes that Jinji isn't a weak old man like he previously claimed to be, but the fact that he's losing to an ugly land whale still feels odd to him. After releasing him from his hold, Jinji meets the guard leader, who hands him coins as payment for his services, causing Hiro to call him a cheap scumbag. As the soldiers restrain him, Jinji tells him to avoid saying he slayed Martin, or else he'll be sentenced to hard labor just like him. This confuses Hiro, so he explains that he was sentenced to 13 years of jail time and hard labor, and is currently out on parole. When Hiro asks why he doesn't just quit the game, he says he can't and calls the names of the best friends he slayed, Henry and Mori, as though he's talking to them. Seeing this, Hiro calls him crazy, but he tells Hiro that he's the one who's insane, and the guards start kicking Hiro's rear while pushing him to jail. As they walk through the street, a large crowd gathers to watch, and this makes Hiro so uncomfortable that he wishes he could cut this travel scene. Just then, the guards stop, and the background characters start tossing rocks at him while insulting him. When he asks what's going on, the guard leader, Mark, explains that it's a famous ritual done in TED called stone throwing time, but this only makes Hiro more annoyed. As Hiro starts ranting, Mark admits that he doesn't like the ritual as well since the stones hit him as well sometimes, and after taking a few jabs in the head, he orders the people to stop throwing. Hiro becomes so depressed that he starts to wonder why he's playing the game in the first place, and suddenly, he remembers the goddess telling him to defeat the demon lord and save the world of Aberdeen. This makes him regain his confidence, so he asks the guard to release him, threatening to cut out his family marbles if he refuses, but this only confuses Mark. When Mark asks what he's blabbing about, he reveals that he's a hero and claims that he'll soon be sent by the king to save the world. As he yaps about how he'll soon awaken his nine-tails beast, Mark interrupts and tells him that he's seen many psychos like him recently who claim to be heroes, which annoys him. This leaves Hiro speechless, but Mark scolds him for stressing him out by using false heroism to try to escape his punishment, and the fact that being a hero isn't a cheat in this isekai world frustrates Hiro. As he prepares to continue moving forward, he suddenly sees Alicia watching him closely from a rooftop, and this makes him so scared that he starts begging Mark to take him to jail quickly. After tossing him in a cell, the guards mock him for trying to play hero before leaving the area. Hiro tries to kick down the wall to escape, but he's reminded that he's no Kool-Aid man as his efforts only bring him leg pain. He then tries to log out, but the screen informs him that he can't leave because he's in the middle of an event, so he finally accepts his fate. After an hour of lying in the cell, he tries to log out again, but the system crushes his escape dreams once again, causing him to crash out. When his stomach growls, he yells even louder while ranting about how the trashy game also makes him feel hungry. However, when he sits down, he suddenly gets the urge to pee, which shocks him as well, but he heads to the smelly prison latrine to empty his tank. Just then, a terrifying spirit appears, which scares him so badly that he jumps to the ground and nearly wets himself. As he rattles his brain to figure out what the creature in front of him is, the undead calls his name, and that's when he figures out that it's the ghost of Martin. When the ghost starts spilling blood on him, he realizes that the game is actually a horror game and tries to run away, but slips on a pool of blood, which sends him right back to the ground. With nowhere left to run, he tries to explain to Ghost Martin that he didn't end him on purpose, but the ghost claims he did on purpose to see a Mortal Kombat fatality in person. After Hiro explains himself, the ghost asks him to say the promise they made to each other under a special tree called a Kinura tree, but Hiro explains that he has no idea about any of this because he's only just starting the game. Hearing this, the ghost threatens to haunt him for the rest of his life, and that's when he realizes that Genji is being haunted by the ghosts of his deceased bear friends. Suddenly, the ghost Martin spills an entire bucket's worth of blood on him, and this makes him cry like a pathetic coward for help until a red-headed loli arrives to help him. After unlocking his prison doors, she assures him that he'll be fine and leads him out of the building. When he asks who she is, she introduces herself as Risa and takes him to a room which has a bed at the center. This confuses him, but she suddenly starts acting sus, and the system informs him that he now has to raid her private dungeon. Ro is frozen in shock as he realizes that it's his golden opportunity to lose his V-card, and after minutes of contemplating, he finally accepts the quest. After he lies down on the bed, she takes off her uniform, and he starts to imagine recreating scenes from Johnny Sins movies with her, until he sees that she's actually wearing a Dominator outfit. When he sees that he's all chained up, he realizes that he's cooked, and Risa pulls out a sawtooth blade to sever his limbs. As he cries desperately for help, Riona suddenly arrives and explains that she's late because she was too busy watching telenovela shows at home. When Risa moves in to cut off his package, he begs Riona to help him, but the useless fairy only starts chanting like a cheerleader. Eventually, he gets so terrified that he wets himself, and this makes Risa even more excited to cut him apart. Riona tries to motivate him, but he tells her that he's already given up on the game. Luckily, Mark arrives right on time and tells Risa that the interrogation is cancelled because the head of the city guard, Tesla, wants to see Hiro. Riona starts hyping him up for evading torture, but he tells her that he's never playing the game again and logs out. When he regains consciousness in the real world, he feels relieved that he didn't wet himself over there as well. While staring at the console, he expresses his frustration that the game is making him go through all the kinds of pain and embarrassment he was trying to avoid in his life. Back when he first moved into school, they held an event called the District Track Meet, and during the event, Hiro was warming up while the people in the stands were talking about how he displayed Wally West level speed during middle school racing events. Kaede came by to wish him good luck, and as she walked away, her friend started begging her to be her wingwoman since she was crushing on him. After they left, his friend, Takafumi, came by and told him that a guy named Tatsuya, who ranked highly in middle school races, was participating in the race as well, and reminded him, Hiro, that Tatsuya beat him once. Takafumi also pointed out that scouts from high schools and inter-high organizations were there to watch the event because it was an important event which was happening for the first time. After leaving Takafumi, Hiro sat on a bench and calmed his nerves for a bit before deciding to go play with his meat sword in the bathroom. However, on his way there, he was approached by a weird foreign guy in shades who asked to talk to him. When he took off the shades, Hiro was surprised to see that, yes, the famous runner, Mike, who at some point won an Olympic silver medal before retiring soon after to become a sports writer. As Hiro geeked over him, he told Hiro that he suspected that a new star would be born at the event since there were so many promising athletes around, and then told him to do his best. Some minutes later, Hiro was all geared up in his racing gear, preparing to begin his run, but he realized that he had forgotten to take a leak as he had initially planned. As they took their positions on the track, Tatsuya asked Hiro why he was so confident when a huge star like Mike was around, and Hiro said he only needed to run like he normally did. The two speedsters declared that they'd outrun each other, and as they squatted in preparation for the race, Hiro swore to himself that he'd defeat Tatsuya and set a new record, which would shock everyone. When the race began, Hiro lost balance due to his overthinking, and this allowed the other racers to run far ahead of him. He ran as fast as he could to catch up with them, but ended up slipping and falling on his face while Tatsuya took the top spot. Everyone in the stands was shocked that the golden boy, Hiro, had just lost the race, but he doubled down on the fumbling by peeing himself. Takafumi and the teacher rushed over to check on him, but they stopped halfway when they saw the puddle of green juice he had spilt on himself, and everyone in the crowd started trolling him, including the teacher. Shortly afterwards, Hiro cleaned himself up in the bathroom, and on his way out, Kaede tried to cheer him up, but this only made him angrier, so he yelled at her, causing her to cry and run away. Unfortunately, Mike saw this and condemned him for his rude behavior. As he tried to explain himself, Mike told him that the peeing incident would have been better if he had done it on purpose because a runner should be able to perform under pressure. However, he said that Hiro had an even bigger issue, and when Hiro asked what it was, he simply told him a ridiculous anime quote, which made him even more ticked off. Back in the present, Hiro heads to the dinner table, where Kaede scolds him once again for making noises while playing video games at night, but he tells her that he wasn't playing video games. However, she still complains that he makes a lot of noise, so he pulls an Uno reverse by bringing up how noisy she got with her friends while watching K-pop Demon Hunters. As she tries to continue her rant, their mom shows up and tells her to calm down. However, the airheaded siblings continue bantering with each other until Hiro reveals that he's quit the game. This confuses her, so he explains that it's a shitty game. However, Kaede claims he's only giving excuses and calls him pathetic, which shocks him because she was the same person who was asking him to quit just a second ago. She explains that she sees him as a pathetic loser because he quit running for role-playing games, and now he's quitting role-playing games as well. After she leaves for school, Hiro rams the table out of anger, but his mom explains that Kaede just wants him to keep being the cool big brother, whom she used to brag about to her classmates. Later in school, the bullies approach Hiro to ask for a favor, but he doesn't even listen to their request before handing them some cash and walking away. This shocks the thugs, as well as Takafumi, who asks Hiro if he's sure about what he's doing. But Hiro tells him to drop it. As he walks through the hallway, the teacher asks him about his post-graduation plans, but he coldly tells him he needs more time to think about it while walking away. On his way home, he gets a call from Riona, who invites him to the shop, claiming she wants to show him something, and he admits that he was already planning to drop by. At the store, he hands Riona back the Kiwami Quest game, and when she asks why he's dumping it, he starts ranting about all the harsh experiences he has at the game, causing her to tease him. When he threatens to take it elsewhere, she tells him that he won't earn any money doing so before asking him if he's heard of Kamui. Hiro admits that he's heard of him, so she explains that he was a talented player of games and shows Hiro a clip where Kamui was telling a lady about how the game made his life much better. She then shows him a walkthrough site which Kamui made for the game in high school, and after clicking it, he asks why no one else has been able to beat the game even with the walkthrough's help. She explains that it's because it's hard to understand, and as he tries to read it, he only hears a bunch of insults, which annoys him. When he checks for instructions on his particular scenario, Kamui advises him to face Alicia in a way that'll throw her off without fighting her. As he searches for other instructions, Kamui tells him to go buy some equipment, but he gets annoyed by Kamui's constant insults. Suddenly, Riona hugs him from behind with her colossal milk factories pressing in his back, and tells him that she likes him and intends to marry him if he clears the game. Bro's brain immediately shuts down, and he promises to log in when he heads home. Soon after, he resumes the game and scolds Risa for sniffing his soiled sheets before following Mark and Riona ahead. As they walk together, Hiro asks where they are, so Mark explains that they're in an underground passage used to transport prisoners. When they get outside, Hiro sees that it's already morning, and it ticks him off because the game sped up time despite claiming to be super realistic. Mark then reveals that the mansion in front of them belongs to the queen of the closed city. As they enter the building, Mark informs them that the esteemed city guard captain, Tesla, also resides there, and the only reason human trash like him is even permitted to enter is that Tesla ordered it. Soon, they arrive at the dining table where Tesla is seated, and Mark advises Hiro to mind his manners while talking to him. However, Tesla welcomes him to sit at the table with a warm smile and even asks him to join him for dinner. When Hiro tries to sit down, he remembers that his shorts are currently soaked, and this makes him hesitate. But he finally sits down when he realizes that Tesla is a nice guy who wouldn't troll him. He asks Tesla why he summoned him, and Riona starts talking nonsense about how his P unlocked his hidden godly powers, so he decides to ignore her. Tesla says he's heard Alicia's side of the story, but admits that people who want to unalive others don't usually do it with an apple knife, and Hiro is happy to hear this. He also points out that there was a sword at the scene which Hiro could have used instead, and brings up the fact that the knife pierced Martin's throat, which is a feat that even a knife master can't accomplish. This makes him conclude that it was a sudden, foreseen accident, and Hiro starts jumping up and down in excitement. He then acquits Hiro of his crimes and invites him to enjoy the meal in front of him. As Hiro munches on the food like a deranged tiger, Tesla warns him to be careful of Alicia since she still harbors resentment towards him, and tells him to come see him if he has any problems. When he tells Hiro his nickname, Thundering Tesla, Bro starts glazing him, claiming it sounds much cooler than the Honored One, but Riona tells him to stop being a simp. Afterwards, he heads outside to celebrate his freedom, and he tells Riona that he needs to go home to retrieve his sword, but she starts trolling him for wetting himself again, causing him to scold her. As he walks through the town, Riona reminds him that his house is far away at the edge of town and tells him to be vigilant on his way there. Just then, some background characters approach him and ask if he's really been cleared of his crimes. When he admits that he's been cleared, the villagers suddenly switch their tone and start accusing him of being a criminal again while tossing rocks at him. He runs away to avoid the commotion and eventually finds a hiding spot where Riona explains that the public opinion was made harsh in that game as a way of mirroring how Twitter users in the real world behave. When he notices that all of his haters have blocked the nearby bridge while searching for him, Riona says they have to give up the mission of getting the sword for the time being because they can only get to his home by crossing the bridge. She then suggests getting some equipment, but when he shows her the few coins he has left, she says it can only get him a low-quality herb. When he asks her how he can make money in the game world, she presents him with 3 realistic options, which include working, borrowing, and stealing. He's shocked that stealing is even an option in the game world, but she shows him some old people, claiming they're easy targets, and this only makes him yell at her. When she suggests working, he remembers how he used to be an errand boy for game companies back in the day, and tells her that he'll give it a shot. Soon after, they arrived at a shabby building called the Employment Agency, which Riona describes as a back alley job office. This confuses him, so she explains that a back alley office is perfect for him, since it's meant for people who have become unemployable. When he enters the building, he sees an old lady who calls him a murderer while asking him why he wants a job. As he rants, she rage-baits him further by accusing him of bribing his way out of prison before handing him a job request sheet. While reading the worksheet, he finds out that the job is 1 month of hard labor underground in exchange for 20,000 yen. Since the weapons he plans to buy aren't that expensive, he asks for something lighter, so the old lady hands him another sheet, which requests that he do whatever a guy named Brian says in exchange for 100 yen. He immediately agrees to take this job, thinking that the requests being mentioned are normal house chores, but the old lady gives him a whip to take with him and informs him that Brian is a middle-aged weirdo who loves recreating scenes from 50 Shades of Grey with his workers. This makes Hiro crash out, but the old lady grabs him and scolds him for lacking resolve before chasing him out of her office. Outside, Riona explains that the old lady felt he was mocking her life because her backstory included working for years in the underground before finally gathering money to open the back alley office. Since Hiro sucks at getting jobs, just like all of you, Riona suggests borrowing from Jinji, who abandoned the game to do whatever he wants. When they arrive at the casino, Riona asks Jinji to help Hiro and then narrates how he peed himself in the torture chamber. When Riona asks him to lend Hiro some money, Jinji refuses and shoves him aside while insulting him for peeing himself, and this gets Hiro so angry that he tackles him. As the two idiots fight, Jinji turns it into a no disqualification match by pulling out some brass knuckles, but Hiro dodges his punch and goes even lower by pulling his hair until he finally drops to his knees. When Hiro attempts to land the finishing blow, Martin's ghost appears and points out that he's about to end someone in rage again, and this makes Hiro so scared that he runs into a corner. As Genji talks to his own ghost, Riona tells Hiro that Genji regrets slaying his best friends deep down, so he apologizes to the fatso for how he treated him. Since Jinji lost the duel, Riona hassles him and makes him give them all his coins. After leaving the pub, they head to an equipment shop where Hiro tries to buy some smoke bombs, but the cute receptionist, Melissa, makes him pay a huge amount of money for them. Afterwards, Hiro returns to his shed and sees a sword in the corner. As he picks it, Alicia suddenly appears and he tries to use his smoke bombs, but they're both useless. When she charges in to destroy him, Rissa suddenly arrives and tells Alicia to stay away from her glorious bedwetter. Like a true knight in shining armor, she tells Hiro that she'll protect him, but he asks her why she's there. When Alicia asks why she's protecting a prisoner, Rissa informs her that the city guard captain, Tesla, has acquitted him of all charges, and Riona informs Hiro that Tesla has the absolute judicial authority in town. Rissa then tells her that she'll punish her if she chooses to harm Hiro despite the captain's judgment, and this makes him feel relieved. But when he asks her how she knew about the attack, she says she's been following him around like a creep all day, hoping to get a taste of his popsicle. Hiro is shocked since he didn't realize at all that he was being tailed, and when Riona suggests adding her to his party, he realizes that she could be helpful since she possesses a special ability which he's yet to fully figure out. Risa then reveals that she has the power of super smell and tracked him using the scent of his pee, and Riona explains that ammonia has a pungent smell that's easy to trace. As Hiro crashes out, she reminds him that the game chases ultimate realism, unlike comic strips that automatically reset, and tells him that the smell of urine won't conveniently disappear. Just then, Alicia tries to ambush him, but Risa pulls him away just in time and asks her why she's attacking him despite hearing about Tesla's decision. However, Alicia claims that no one told her anything, and she's just executing a murderer and his accomplice, adding that she won't hear that he's being cleared until later. Realizing that she's beyond the point of reason, Risa welcomes her challenge, and she immediately charges at the lowly, but Risa knocks the knife out of her hand and kicks her away. Risa then lands a heavy attack, but when the smoke clears, they don't find Alicia's body anywhere around. Just then, they see her hanging on the wall like Spider-Woman, causing everyone to freak out, and she starts yapping about how she's going to destroy everyone. To stop her, Hiro tosses her knife out the window, but she suddenly pulls out 2 more knives, and Risa decides to get serious as well to protect Hiro. This makes Hiro so happy that he decides to let her join his party, but she shocks everyone in the room by revealing that the real reason she's protecting him is that she wants to torture him within an inch of death herself. As she talks about all the gnarly things she wants to do with his body, Hiro starts ranting about how she's just as crazy as Alicia. When Risa charges in with a heavy slash, Alicia blocks with her blades and tells her that she's too slow to defeat her before launching several slashes at her. After dodging her attacks, Risa tries to cleave her head off, but Alicia dodges and pins her to the ground while threatening to cut her into pizza slices. Risa manages to push her away, but Alicia charges in with a flurry of knife attacks and finally manages to slash her on the cheek. Seeing that his protector is on the defensive makes Hiro scared, but Riona tells him that Risa is planning to pull off a cool counter she learned from Mayweather matches. Suddenly, Risa knocks Alicia's blades off her hands and brags about how her attack was perfectly timed before moving in to make the finishing slash. However, Alicia stops her with a kick to the gut and then proceeds to kick her to the ground. As Hiro worries for her, Alicia pulls her head upside down like a zombie while telling him that she'll unalive him first before moving on to her. At this point, Hiro accepts that he's cooked because Alicia is just too strong for him, but then he remembers Kamui telling him to figure out a way to take down his homegirl without fighting her. As Alicia moves in to make an attack, Riona runs towards her to buy time, but the blonde psycho scares her off with a knife slash and asks Hiro if he's getting protection from the fairies since she sensed something around her. Riona tells Hiro to run, but he stands firmly, like a cowboy about to engage in a shootout, and when Alice changes towards him, he finally figures out the ultimate move that can take down any kind of girl, whether real or game characters. He suddenly grabs her milk bags, thinking she'll shriek in embarrassment like a typical anime girl, but the psycho pulls him closer and calls him a fool for thinking that she'd never had a guy squeeze her cushions before. She then kicks him to the ground and prepares to end him, but Hiro realizes that his body suddenly feels heavy for some reason. When he turns back, he sees the ghost of Martin holding him down while begging him to join him on the other side. Alicia gets excited when she senses her brother's spirit and tells him that she's about to avenge him by slaying his murderer, which makes Martin cheer her on. Hiro feels that the instructions he got from Kamui are completely useless, but then he remembers the words more clearly and finally realizes what he meant. When Alicia moves in to pierce a hole in his head, he tells her that he's in love with her, which makes her pull back and start acting shy. She accuses him of lying, but he passionately tells her that he loves her and wants to marry her, and this makes her drop her blade as she wonders what's going on. However, she suddenly snaps again and claims that he's too late because she always loved him as well, before asking how he could do something so horrible to her brother. He tries to explain that it was an accident, but she cuts him off and says that it's all his fault for mentioning that he wants to leave the city. As tears pour from her eyes, she asks him why he ran away and then runs out of the room herself. Riona praises Hiro for escaping certain death once again, but he tells her that he's been wrong the whole time because he neglected the fact that they considered him a best friend and didn't even bother to grieve Martin after accidentally slaying him. He accepts that he's a horrible person, but Riona tells him not to get so serious since they're only background characters. When Risa wakes up, he thanks her for saving him, and when she asks him for a taste of his trouser snake as appreciation, he tells her to leave. Shortly afterwards, he pulls out the sword from its sheath and notices that it looks worn out. After getting directions from Riona, he asks her to stay behind at the cabin and heads over to the Kinura tree. There, he calls out Martin's spirit and grabs his hand while watching a flashback of the day when they made a promise under the Kinura tree to become best friends forever. When he says these words to the ghost, Martin finally ascends, and after he leaves, Hiro starts crying until Riona informs him that he now has a nice title. Just then, they hear the city bells ringing, and when they take a closer look, they see that the city is literally on fire. When Hiro asks Riona what's going on, she says she has no idea because she's never seen an event like that before. They soon arrive at the center of town, where they see people running for their lives as their houses are being barbecued. Hiro tries to question one of the background characters, but he shoves Hiro to the ground and runs away. When he attempts to question a lady, she does the same thing, so he starts ranting again, until Riona explains that in panic situations, everyone looks out for themselves and won't answer him. She then suggests asking the nearby blacksmith while he fixes Hiro's sword. As Hiro enters the blacksmith shop, he tells the blacksmith that he wants to fix his sword, but the blacksmith calls him crazy for requesting that during a dire situation. When Hiro asks what's going on, the blacksmith finally spills the tea, informing him that goblins have attacked the city, and Hiro how they got in when the city is surrounded by a moat. The man explains that they're experiencing their biggest drought in 50 years, which dried up the moat, and the goblins stole the opportunity to attack them. Riona is surprised because she never thought a goblin event was possible, but Hiro is excited because he'll finally get to fight a monster and hopefully level up like Sung Jin-woo. When he asks the blacksmith to remove the rust from his sword, the blacksmith says there's no time, but he tells the man that removing it will allow him to fight goblins. After his explanation, the blacksmith directs him to a whetstone in the room and gives him tips on how to use it to remove the rust himself. As Hiro scrapes the sword, he notices that the rust isn't coming off easily, and when he hears the screams of the people outside, he tosses the sword away and tells Riona that he can't be scraping swords while the city is in danger. Riona reminds him that he needs to fix the sword before he can fight, but he tells her that he'll use it as it is while running off. However, Riona blocks his path and tells him that he's 100% certain to die if he goes out there, since goblins are just as strong as ogres despite being smaller. She then informs him that something terrible will happen to him if he dies in Kiwami Quest, and this makes his heart start pounding as he concludes that he could die in the real world as well. However, Riona says this isn't a trashy death game anime, and explains that losing the game would make his hard drive and console break apart. This makes him freak out, and he asks her how the design of the game didn't cause a huge problem. Riona then reveals that Kiwami Quest is the ultimate garbage game that destroys consoles when a player loses, and over the past 10 years, many users have filed lawsuits over this death system. Though the company used its massive power and wealth to quash any problems, the public outcry even extended to retail stores, which were flooded with claims. Furthermore, various other problems manifested, which led to the game being buried as a next-level dumpster trash full dive role-playing game, which explains why Hiro can't get someone to take it out of his hands without paying them first. Riona then suggests logging out for the meantime and taking a look at the Aubergine walkthrough. When he summons the save screen, Riona is relieved that he can still save their current checkpoint, but he tells her to wait for him to take a peek at a goblin. After she permits him, he peeks through a small crack in the door and sees an ugly goblin about to destroy a crying girl. He tries to play Superman, but Riona drags him back while reminding him how expensive it would be to replace his console if he dies in-game, but he says he'll never buy one from her since her prices are about 5 times the amount to get a PlayStation 5. She tells him to think things more rationally since the girl in trouble is simply an artificial background character, but when he remembers what happened with Martin, he tells her that he can't let someone die in front of him just because they're an extra. However, she gleefully informs him that the city guard had arrived, so he looks outside to watch them fight through goblins. In the street, 3 guards have a standoff with that goblin, but the goblin bites off the arm of one of them in the blink of an eye. The second guard tries to attack it in retaliation, but the goblin destroys him easily and slashes off the arms of the third guard before crushing him like a hazelnut. Seeing this, Hiro is so shocked by how fearsome the goblins are that he can barely move, and Riona explains that nearly all players who leave TED avoid fighting the goblins. When Hiro asks if any player has ever defeated a goblin, Riona tells him the only 2 she knows of are Kamui and a player named Shohei, who is a boxing champion in the real world. Despite this, Hiro decides to save the people on the street, and when Riona tells him he'll die, he says he only needs to buy them enough time to escape. Hearing this, she realizes that she can't dissuade the virgin Hiro, so she promises to give him a discount when his console explodes and tells him to replace his pea-smelling shorts with the ones that the blacksmith left behind. As the goblin approaches the girl, Riona tells Hiro that she'll distract the goblin long enough for him to escape with the girl, and he agrees to go along with her plan. After changing into the blacksmith pants, he squats in preparation for the run of his life, and Riona tosses a rock at the goblin. With the goblin distracted, he quickly carries the girl away, only to run into another goblin ahead. As the 2 goblins approach him from both angles, he puts down the girl, and when he sees how much she resembles Kaide, he tells her to run away and starts provoking the goblins. However, a goblin scares him off and starts chasing her down, so he runs desperately to save her. Suddenly, something awakens inside him, and Speed Force lightning appears around his body as he zooms at ultra-fast speed and successfully saves the girl. As he wonders what happened, Riona informs him that he just used a skill called Pro Athlete Dashing, but he starts to wonder if the game has a bug. When the goblins surround them again, Hiro thinks he's cooked, but suddenly, Tesla arrives in golden armor and uses an overpowered lightning breathing technique to destroy the goblins. After the other guards move away with the girl, Tesla offers Hiro a chance to join the city guard, and he immediately agrees because he wants to fight alongside his glorious king. Tesla then promises to train him, and he gets so happy that he saves that checkpoint and logs out of the game. The next day, Hiro gets the shock of his life when Kamui tells him that joining the city guard means he has a 0% chance of surviving the game. Hiro realizes that this is the perfect time to quit the game, and when he logs into Kamui's site to get instructions on how to survive, Kamui starts roasting him again, causing him to crash out. However, Kamui informs him that his chances aren't 0 since he's earned the title of Best Friend Slayer, and when Hiro fills in the words of the promise he made with Martin, Kamui praises him for being able to successfully navigate his dangerous scenario with a ghost and decides to tell him the trick to conquering Kiwami Quest. Just when Hiro starts getting hopeful, the masked maniac says his chances only rose from 0 to 0.5, causing him to yell at his screen again. Kamui then instructs him to endure 5 days of training until the second wave of the goblin assault, but then warns him that it might break him. This makes Hiro realize that this game is more messed up than Elden Ring, and Kamui goes on to say that the mission will be tough for garbage players, but a failure who can't overcome the challenge will never succeed in life. He admits that the goblin assault is a deadly event with S-tier difficulty, but reveals that once he clears it, he'll encounter the true mystery of Ted. Kamui then advises him to keep his eyes open and think, because despite the near 0% chance of survival, he himself managed to clear it, and this means that it's not impossible. After the screen turns off, Hiro realizes that Kamui just gave him a rude version of All Might's next is your turn moment, and it rattled him so much that he lost his appetite. He knows he doesn't have the money to buy a new console if he breaks this one, and also that it's the smart decision to quit Kiwami Quest at this point, but he still can't make up his mind. Soon after, he hands Kai to his remaining pudding, and when she asks why, he says it's because he's decided not to give up on his role-playing game. When she brings up how he once called it a trashy game, he admits that it's the most garbage game on planet Earth, but then remembers Kaida's rant at the dinner table the other day and tells her that he decided to at least get to an ending point. He then reminds her that school is off for the next several days and warns her that he'll be playing games the whole time. When she asks why he's telling her all that, he says it's because he knows he'll definitely scream out loud that night. She starts questioning his sanity, but he cuts her off and tells her that it's exactly like she said, because he feels like he's been running away from things ever since he quit running on the track, and he finally wants to see something through. When he asks for her permission to do so, she tells him to leave her alone and shuts the door, and he apologizes to her. Soon after, he returns to the game world and walks with Captain Tesla, as they make their way to the Queen's mansion. As he walks ahead, Riona brings up the low chances of survival that Kamui pointed out in his video, and calls him a dunce for not checking it before making his decision. She then admits that they have to make it through the training, and he starts to wonder if they're about to put him through the training that Saitama did, since Kamui said it'll break him. Tesla then informs him that they need to greet the Queen Governor before making their way to the Grand Sleep at the training grounds, where recruits are trained. They get to a point where Hiro starts hearing screams of someone being tortured again, which makes him cringe. Later on, they meet the Queen of the city, and after she introduces herself, Hiro is surprised that her name is Govern. Suddenly, she hugs him, pressing her soft megaplots on him, which short-circuits his brain, while telling him that she'd be praying for his safety during his upcoming battles against the goblins. As they walk out of the room, Riona starts trolling him for the pathetic animal sound he made when Govern's cannons touched his body, and when he claims that it's completely normal, she says she'll try it out, but he begs her not to because it could give him a heart attack. When they arrive at the training grounds, Tesla introduces Hiro as a recruit who has temporarily enlisted as a mercenary, and he also calls forth 2 other recruits named Granada and Paolu, who are also mercenaries. He tells his knights to treat the recruits nicely and prepare for the next goblin attack. He then informs them that the next goblin attack will most likely target the Queen's mansion, since the goblins believe that the city will fall if the mansion does. And then he tells them that it's their duty as the Ted City Guard to protect the city. While walking away, he tells Hiro to work hard, and after he leaves, a guard named Bob offers to show Hiro around. As they walk through the yard, Bob tells the newbies to drop the formalities with him because he only joined the guard a month ago, and Paul starts glazing Granada, claiming he's the strongest. In Hiro's room, he asks her why she's been quiet for a while, so she explains that she doesn't like interrupting during explanations. After he changes into his armor, Bob returns and tells him that it's time for a light tutorial. As Hiro celebrates, Bob tells him to calm down since they're only doing a basic introductory exercise, and asks him if he's specialized in covert operations, since his body is slender, but Hiro says he isn't. When they arrive at the training ground, Mark introduces himself as the person in charge of training, and he starts acting harshly towards Hiro. After he leaves, a girl named Kathy shows up and introduces herself to Hiro as the one who took the girl he saved home. But Mark comes back and interrupts their flirting by challenging Hiro to a sword duel. When their match begins, Hiro charges in for an attack, but Mark dodges easily and nails him in the stomach. After a bit of motivation from his peers, Hiro charges in again, but Mark blocks all his attacks and knocks his sword from his hand. He then calls Hiro a weakling and knocks him to the ground, causing all the guards around to start gossiping about how weak he is, and Hiro realizes that Bob was trying to warn him about this. After Granada defeats the instructor easily, the other cadets start avoiding Hiro for being a Megumi-level fraud. The next morning, Hiro hurries over to the training grounds, where Mark starts bullying him with harsh words and then tells him that he's completely talentless. As he does some practice swings, Granada brings up the fact that he slayed his bestie, and suddenly starts threatening him. However, Kathy invites him to train with her and teaches him how to properly hold the sword. The next day, Hero is put in a duel against Granada, and he tries to land a heavy swing, but Granada parries it away and nails him in the stomach. Granada and Palu then start insulting him, calling him a worthless failure who shouldn't be part of the guard, and that's when Hero realizes that his life in the game world is just as messed up as it is in the real world. A while later, Hero is seated in the corner, complaining about how depressing his training arc is, but Riona cheers him up by telling him she made a nice discovery while he was training. Soon after, they arrive at the consultation office, and Riona explains that the purpose of the office is to heal a guard's pained heart because problems are always bound to occur during a gathering of hot-headed morons. She tells him that the consultation office is exactly what he needs, but he starts acting doubtful, so she sternly advises him not to allow his bullying slide just because he's in a video game. Inside the office, the officer asks why he's there, and he explains that he's a recruit who is struggling to fit in because the instructor keeps dismissing him and all his peers are making fun of him. Riona then tells him to mention the money part, so he tells the officer that he's being extorted, and the man asks him to tell him the full story. After his explanation, Hero hopes that justice will be served, but the officer pulls a 360 on him by claiming that he's the one to blame for his problems. As Hero stares in shock, the man explains that the root cause of the issues is that he joined the guards with less battle skills than a brain-dead monkey, and Hero tells him that it was Tesla who invited him to join, but he says he could have just declined. He then recommends quitting immediately and doesn't even give him a chance to respond before calling the next person in. While walking away from the office, Hero rants about how worthless it was, and Riona agrees that most consultation offices are worthless, which makes him scold her for recommending one in the first place. However, she tells him that it may help him down the line, and Kathy suddenly arrives and tells him that consultation offices aren't helpful for normal problems since they're meant for illnesses and injuries. She informs him that there are other options to explore if he's being troubled by something, and then shows him a rosary while telling him that she usually prays in situations like that, which makes good things happen in her life. She then advises him to move at his own pace, and he thanks her for it. That evening, as he walks through the forest, Riona informs him that Kathy's invitation for him to pray was a standard game advancement technique called a quest flag. When he arrives at the church, a nun tells him that he sees a dark cloud around him, and announces that she'll perform a cleansing ritual on him. As she walks away, Hero asks Riona what she means by that, and she assumes that it's a baptism. The nun then returns with a huge bucket of water, which she throws on him and tells him that all will go well with him now that he's been cleaned. Outside, Hero starts complaining about how their so-called baptism is making him feel cold, but Riona assures him that there will be positive development in his life from now on. The next morning, Hero gets knocked down during training and realizes that nothing has changed at all. After Mark leaves, Grenada and Palu arrive and ask him to pay them some money, but he says he doesn't have any money. Hearing this, the bullies decide to punish him by having him face Palu, and he feels confident since it's not the powerhouse, Granada, that he's facing this time. When the duel begins, Palu delivers a super fast body shot and then starts nailing him with several heavy attacks until he admits defeat. However, Palu continues mauling him, causing everyone else to worry for him until Kathy arrives with Mark to show him what's going on. When Mark asks what's going on, the bullies claim they're only playing out their favorite scenes from Bleach with him, so he pardons them and tells everyone to resume training. When they ask what his relationship is with Kathy, he says they're just friends. However, they suddenly start clinging to her, and when they ask her if she's really friends with Hero, she tells them with tears in her eyes that they're not friends. This makes them call him a down bad loser, and they walk away with Kathy. After they leave, Riona starts counting all the bad things that have happened to him that day, but he says he doesn't blame Kathy since she only did what anyone else would have done. As Hero starts to despair, she reminds him that the goblin attack is in one day, but he complains that he can't take even a single more day of their torture. So she decides to fix things for him using her fairy powers. The next morning, Granada raises an alarm over his missing shoe, and they end up finding it in a smelly puddle of sewage, which makes him cry. Soon after, he notices that his sword is missing as well, and everyone helps him search for hours, but no one can find it, so he finally gives up. Hours later, he sees that his sword has been plunged into the toilet, and he immediately accuses Hero of doing it out of spite for him. However, everyone around backs up Hero, claiming he doesn't have any proof against him, and brings up how Hero helped during the search for his sword. Suddenly, they hear a scream coming from a nearby room, and when they hurry inside, they see the nurse, Maria, complaining that her plot armors are missing. They end up finding them in Grenada's bag, and Maria accuses him of doing OnlyFans fetish plays with them, so he insults her until she starts crying. Seeing this, the rest of the guards gang up on him, calling him a weirdo and telling him that the guards don't need an ugly loser like him. He tries to talk to Palu, but even his bestie abandons him and joins the others in making fun of him, so he cries alone in the corner. Several hours later, Mark announces that Granada has quit the guards, and Tesla interrupts with a letter supposedly written by Palu, which claims that Mark was the one who stole Granada's boots. As the two of them start arguing, Tesla asks the guards if Mark is fit to be their instructor, and with tears in her eyes, Kathy tells him that Mark joined the others in bullying Hero. It's at that moment that everyone realizes how poorly they've been treating Hero, and they all start condemning Mark's actions until Tesla fires him. After they leave, Kathy apologizes to Hero, and the others apologize as well. That evening, Riona starts celebrating the fact that her plan was successful, but Hero scolds her for going too far. Just then, he gets a title change, which calls him a spiteful devil for the recent events, and after he scolds her for causing this, she thanks him for playing the game again. As a way of acknowledging his resolve, she finally decides to tell him the reason she went to such lengths to find someone who can clear the game. She brings up how she promised to marry anyone who clears the game other than Kamui, and Hero says he felt she was just joking, but she then reveals that she met Kamui once in the game. Back then, the dude was aura farming in his black armor, and his strong Riz force captivated Riona, so she ran up to him and asked him to go out with her. However, he tells her he's not interested in ladies with cow-sized milk factories, which leaves her shocked to the core as he walks away. In the present, she starts ranting about the harsh words he said about her moneymakers back then, and says that after hearing that he cleared the game, she decided back then that she'd get revenge on him by finding someone who could successfully clear the game and marry them. Hero is surprised that her motivation is that silly, but the bird-brained fairy starts talking about her plans to smooch him in front of Kamui during their honeymoon and give him the finger. Hours later, Hero is standing on the balcony, thinking about how Riona's motivations are making him less hyped up than he was before, but Tesla suddenly arrives and asks to have a private chat with him. After he apologizes for Mark and Granada, Hero asks why he's out that late, and he explains that he can't sleep because he knows the goblins can attack at any time. Hero then claims that the goblins will arrive that night, but when Tesla asks him how he knows, he says he's only guessing because he doesn't want Tesla to know he read it on a walkthrough. When Tesla suddenly brings up Hero's desire to leave the city, the virgin Hero starts freaking out, but Tesla says it's fine because he'd have broken out of the city if he weren't the captain. Hero then asks him to leave the city with him, and he replies that he'll consider his request since it's another reason for them to find a way to deal with the goblin crisis. It's at that moment that Hero realizes that Tesla is talking like a movie character who's going to die soon, so he makes it his new goal to stop that from happening. When he logs out of the video game, he's stunned to see Kide in his room, and he accuses her of trying to smother him to death while he was unconscious, but she explains that she only entered because he wasn't answering the door. He asks why she was searching for him in the first place, so she explains that his previous speech made her scared that he was going to try to off himself in the video game. However, when he thanks her, she tosses a game at him and calls him a shut-in loser before leaving his room. Some hours later, he fills in his new title on Kamui's shore, and Kamui finally decides to tell him the trick to passing the game. As he stares at the information in shock, Kamui starts shaming him for using a walkthrough and closes the site himself. The next day, Hero and the rest of the guards are fully geared up in preparation of the goblin attack, and Tesla announces that 2 new fighters will be joining their team. Hearing this, Hero realizes that they're replacements for Granada and Palu, and he feels relieved that he has 2 new squad mates he can rely on, until he sees that it's Alicia and Risa. As the girls tease him, Hero starts rethinking his life choices, but Riona tells him that 2 of the women he's met in the past have joined him in his time of need, and this is a proper video game development called a harem. However, Hero complains that it's not a good thing at all, because he could get sliced up like an apple before the goblins even show up. Tesla then informs them that they've evacuated the people in the city, but many have ignored the evacuation order and there are also reports of crime occurring out of sight, which is why he wants all of them to go on patrol. This surprises Hero, so he asks if the goblin event is still happening that day, but Riona says another event is happening first, and assumes that it won't be a very difficult event. Tesla then assigns Hero to the Eastern District, and this makes him want to hurl because he knows it's where Jinji lives. He then assigns Risa and Alicia to join him because he thinks they're close, but Alicia starts hovering around him like a vengeful spirit, so he tells Tesla that she had a grudge against him. However, the captain says it's their opportunity for them to clear things up since he doesn't want any beef within the army. As they walk through the street, Risa brings up how Alicia tried to end him during their fight and suggests keeping away from her, but he says she's just as creepy as her. Just then, they see a thief runs towards their direction with a woman's purse, but Alicia retrieves the purse by slicing his hand off, and when Hiro hands the woman her bag, she gets so creeped out that she collapses. As Risa interrogates the thief, he reveals that he and the other thieves were sent to distract the guards so that his boss could make a move. When Hiro asks where his boss is, he directs him to a nearby casino. As they enter the casino, they notice a bunch of hostages tied up, and the crazy girls take out the armed thugs, allowing Hiro to head to the hostages. However, he notices Jinji among the hostages, and Jinji suddenly puts him in a sleeper hold while revealing that he's the evil boss. Hiro manages to free himself and tells the girls to stand back so he can have a rematch with her overweight scumbag. Jinji attacks with some brass knuckles, but Alicia interrupts the duel by punching him in the stomach. As the guards round up the criminals, Jinji tells them that he intentionally commits crimes so he can be put in prison where he'd get free meals and protection from goblins. Just then, the city bells start ringing and someone announces that goblins have arrived. Hiro's stomach suddenly starts going bonkers, so he heads to the toilet to empty his tank. However, immediately he finishes, he sees a goblin scoping him from the outside, causing him to scream in fear. He screams out for Riona to help him, but she ignores him because she thinks he's only exaggerating the size of his dump. Just then, the goblin's head gets sliced off, and Risa enters the bathroom to ask if he's doing okay. Hiro is surprised that she was there to save him, so she explained that she followed him because she was excited to watch him relieve himself again until she noticed a goblin creeping up on the roof above him, which led to her decapitating him. He thanks her, but she says it's no problem and asks to take a look at his sword. When he hands it to her, she suddenly stabs his leg, causing him to scream while calling her a sadistic lunatic, but his cries only get her more excited. She starts fantasizing about all the Game of Thrones private scenes they can roleplay together and gives him consent to feel up her golf ball-sized plots, but Alicia interrupts their sus play and reminds them that they don't have time for nonsense. The two creepy ladies start arguing over who's the bigger egghead, until Hiro interrupts by reminding them that the goblins are already attacking the city. As Hiro runs through the street, he feels relieved that he escaped the ladies because they could end him before he meets a goblin, and when Riona shows up, he scolds her for not helping her when the goblin attacked him. She apologizes and explains that she was handling something important, but when he asks what it is, she says she was trying to make her hair like Cinderella's, and this makes him scold her even more. Suddenly, his stomach starts going haywire again, and this frustrates him because he'd just gone to the bathroom, but Riona explains that it's an event in the game that would continue as long as he's nervous. This makes him angry because he's about to fail because of his nerves again, and this makes Riona ask him to give him the full details about his past. He says it's not the time since goblins are attacking, but she says he'll never defeat the goblins if he doesn't take care of his stomach pain first. Even though he agrees with her, he still feels uncomfortable about telling her, so she assures him that she won't make fun of him no matter how embarrassing it is. However, when he tells her the story, she immediately bursts into laughter and starts calling him the Sprinkler King, and he feels stupid for trusting her. She then informs him that the game is mirroring his real-life condition, which is why his peeing incident at the track meet is being represented as nervous dumps in the game world. As he struggles with his hurting stomach, Riona starts insulting him the same way Kamui does in his videos, and when he yells back at her, he realizes that his stomach has suddenly stopped hurting. He realizes that Riona was trying to help him from the start, so he thanks her, and his necklace starts glowing once again. When he checks it, he sees that his new title is Evacuation, Best Friend Slayer, Bowel Emptying Amicide, but Riona tells him not to waste their time with his crash-outs because they have to hurry ahead to help the guards. Shortly afterwards, Hiro arrives at the battlefield and sees the guards gathered in front of an army of goblins. And this makes him worried because he knows even a single goblin is as powerful as one of Muzen's upper moons. When the battle begins, the goblins start tearing apart the guards, but Tesla uses a sword version of Thor's lightning attack to destroy one of them. Risa and Alicia also join the fight by easily taking out several goblins, and Hiro is shocked by their strength. Tesla destroys another goblin, and while Risa uses one of the goblins for her science experiment, Alicia drags one inside a dark alley and chops him into pieces. As the girls annihilate more goblins, Hiro smiles as he realizes that the chances of Tesla dying and his own survival have just skyrocketed. Just then, Kathy shows up and informs Tesla that a group of goblins have broken through the south gate and are now making their way to the Queen's mansion. This surprises Tesla, because he knows he left Hokage-level fighters in charge of that region, but Kathy reveals that a powerful goblin destroyed the iron doors. Hearing this, Tesla realizes that a powerful goblin called One Eye has arrived, and Hero tries to ask about it, but Tesla tells him to stay put before running off to face him. When Hero reaches the Southgate region, he sees a huge red goblin demolishing all the guards around, and Tesla introduces him as the king of goblins named One Eye. As Hero stares in shock, Tesla narrates how he once fought against this monstrosity during a mission but only managed to injure one of his eyes. After telling the rest of his guards to transport the cage there, he tells Hero to fight One Eye with him so they can escape the city together. Hero tries to warn him that he'll die, but the golden Gigachad challenges the beast anyway. As he starts to fear for him, the girls show up and tell him not to worry because they're joining the fight against One Eye. This makes him feel relieved, but when Risa tries to jump the One Eye, it sends her flying with a kick to the stomach. Seeing this, Alicia joins Tesla in fighting the beast, and they start zooming around the battlefield like speed demons. When the guards arrive with the caged goblins, the Goblin King starts worrying for them, and this creates an opening for Tesla to take him down with a slash. However, Hero starts feeling that things are too easy, and he remembers Kamui's words. While brainstorming, he remembers the sounds coming from an interrogation room some time ago and tells Tesla that the goblins in cages were captured long ago. He then concludes that Tesla is the one who can find them, but Tesla destroys One Eye and reveals his true villainous nature, while admitting that he kidnapped the goblins. Just then, the Queen arrives and explains that they're using the goblins to keep the city within her control as an independent region. Govern and Tesla then share a kiss, and Tesla destroys his own men before telling Hero that he'll end him for knowing Ted's secret. As everyone looks on, Tesla points his lightning blade at Hero while telling him that he'll never leave the city. But Hero's brain is in shambles because he knows a guy like him who can't even defeat a regular goblin stands no chance against the lightning god in front of him. However, Tesla drops a bombshell, informing him that he's been holding back this whole time, since his Lightning Extreme attack has another faster level called Lightning Extreme Despair, which he intends to show him as a parting gift even though he knows Hero's eyes can't follow it. Hero realizes that he's cooked, and when the Queen gives Tesla the go-ahead to end him, the lightning god charges towards him to destroy him with his Lightning Extreme Despair. As he gets closer, Hero starts panicking because he knows he's about to be put through a world of pain while dying and also loses his console after losing the game. However, Alicia jumps in front of him and takes the attack in his stead, which shocks Hero completely. As she grabs onto her injured stomach, Hero rushes to check on her and asks why she suddenly helped him even though she's wanted to destroy him for so long. Alicia revealed that her brother, Martin, told her in a dream to forgive him since it's not his fault that he died. And she confesses that the reason she joined the guard was to protect him and make up for how horribly she's treated him. She then smiles at him with teardrops standing in her eyes and tells him that she was truly happy when he told her that he wanted to marry her. As her consciousness fades, Hero tries desperately to wake her up, but with her last breath, she tells him to live a full life for her and Martin before finally giving up the ghost. After laying her to rest, Hero asks Riona if background characters that die in the game can come back to life, but she says they don't, so he complains about how realistic the game is once again. However, Tesla interrupts his pity party by claiming that her death was pointless while charging up his blade for his ultimate attack. At that moment, Hero admits to himself that it's just a game, and Alicia is just a mob character that died. But he screams out passionately that jerks like Tesla anger him even more than they do in the real world. When Tesla launches his super-fast lightning slash, Hero surprisingly dodges, and this confuses Tesla, but he decides to try another Lightning Extreme Despair. This time, Hero parries the attack, and this makes Riona start losing her mind as she asks him if he secretly ate a devil fruit, but he tells her to shut up so he can focus. He then decides that he'll use the trick that Kamui taught him, and he remembers Kamui telling him that the trick is something that can be applied both in the game world and the real world. However, he claimed that no one ever uses it in either real world or the game because the world is full of dummies. And then he tells him that a player's stats are increased drastically when they feel a strong emotion to not give up. This allows them to exceed their limits and even change the course of history. And then Kamui took off his mask while telling him that it's the secret Kiwami quest and reality itself. Hero then charges in with a powerful slash, but Tesla blocks, so he overwhelms the scumbag with a flurry of attacks, forcing him to start swinging to defend himself. However, Hero dodges his slash and goes into overdrive with a flurry of quick slashes, and Riona is surprised that she can't follow his movements at all. As she wonders how he unlocked this Ultra Instinct mode, she suddenly realizes that she's moving exactly as Kamui did in the past, so she starts cheering him on. Seeing this, Hero admits that he wants to marry her because of the jiggle physics she's showcasing, and he successfully knocks Tesla's blade away from his arm. However, when he tries to land the finishing strike, his sword breaks on impact with Tesla's armor, and Tesla starts laughing at him once again. Hero starts ranting about the game's realism again, but Tesla ignores him and moves in to land a finishing attack. Suddenly, Hero wakes up in the spirit realm, where he tells Martin that he and Alicia have been destroyed by Tesla. However, Martin tells him that he tried his best and asks him to take him back with him so they can fight together. When Hero awakens in the real world, he sees that the broken part of his sword has now been filled up by Martin's green aura, and it successfully blocked Tesla's attack. As Tesla struggles to understand what's going on, his sword suddenly shatters, and that's when he realizes that Hero is a cursed sword user. Just then, his necklace updates his title to Sword Best Friend Slayer user, Amicidal Blade user, and Tesla pulls out a second blade to face him. The Lightning Junkie then activates the ultimate version of his Lightning Extreme Despair, and Riona starts to worry, but Hero assures her that he'll win. As Tesla charges at him with his ultimate speed, Hero sees him moving in slow motion and launches his own powerful attack in response. However, his knees give out just before impact, and this allows the Lightning King to turn him into a donut. As he lay on his bed, Riona offers to rent him another copy of the game so he can try again, so consults Kamui, who gives him instructions on how to restart the game at the scene before he dies. This excites him as he realizes that he can now save Alicia and slay Tesla, so he tells Riona he's going to try it again. When Riona reminds him how he died, he asks her to give him a month before he can return to the game, and he starts running again. At school, the bullies try to hassle Hero, but he remembers how Tesla tortured him to death, and this makes him so angry that he starts crashing out, which makes the thugs run away. Soon after, he wakes up in a dream realm where he meets Kamui, who tells him to follow him so he can teach him about real life. However, Riona wakes him up by bumping her flesh balloons in his face, so heads back home and logs back into the Kiwami Quest game, hoping to clear it this time around. That brings us to the end of the video. Will Hero defeat Tesla and save Alicia? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more anime recaps like these, subscribe to the channel and watch this video on screen.